This is going to be my 5 out of 5 star review for Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. So, a female apprentice is vying to become a high mage in a male dominated world, and she gets accepted to become a high mage, and she quickly finds out how cruel this world really is to not just women, but to also like minorities and to everybody that isn't a high mage. It also explores how everyday citizens benefit from the status quo that is in this world as well. Themes explored. I am going to be reading these off because there's quite a few. So you have themes of propaganda, misogyny, and racism ingrained in society. You have a lot of that explained in this book. The use of religion to control propaganda, patrol the masses, and paint a scapegoat as the enemy of society instead of the victim. You get a lot of this through conversations between the main character, Sayona, um, who is very hard headed and she sticks to the facts that she has learned, and she doesn't really want to stray from the facts that she has learned because all her ideology is very like evidence based and it's very knowledge based versus the character that she plays off of, which is Tomo, her janitor. He is more like ideologically based. He's more like think about it practically, think about like a real world scenario, how this would actually work out. Think about how magic can be used to exploit the people and how magic can be used to further racism and discrimination and the status quo. The conversations that those two characters had were so well thought out, and I loved every single second of them. You deal with workplace harassment and men given a slap on the wrist. Women are forced to work 3 times harder for everything they want. The challenges and discrimination migrants face integrating into a racist society. You see a lot of our world reflected into this world where you see the difficulties that migrants have trying to get a job, the difficulty migrants have when they do have a job, and how they are treated as beneath everybody else, and how they have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard in order to make the same amount of money as a regular citizen and that was born in this society and that benefits from this society by just having been born here and not be of a different race, not be somebody that came as an outsider. Having to unpack racial biases and misogyny in oneself. You have the main character that has to deal with this a lot, quite often, where she herself is dealing with a lot of misogynistic rhetoric that she has to unpack, and she's dealing with a lot of racist rhetoric that she has to unpack herself because she has learned through the knowledge of the world, through the texts, that it's okay to racially discriminate because there's this group of people called the Quinn, and they are beneath everybody else and their lives don't really matter. And you can kind of see how the main character isn't necessarily the most racist person in this book, but you do see how those racial biases kind of like get ingrained into the main character as you're reading the story, and you're just like, she has to unpack this. This is something that she has to unpack. And you see that in every day. You see that on social media. You see that with your coworkers where you're just like, I think you have to unpack some racist ideologies, having to unpack religious ideologies that are used to control the masses and propaganda in oneself. This one was heavy handed. At first, it wasn't heavy handed, but then it got heavier and heavier, and the examples used were freaking amazing. And you really get to see how people will justify anything when it comes to religion. Like, if somebody is doing some wrongdoing, they'll be like, well, according to our religion, it's okay that we're doing this wrongdoing, and it's okay we're hurting this group of people because of our religion and our religious text and everything that we learned through our religion, which is kind of fucked. But I love that they like really dove into that and they really dug in with that one because it's absolutely necessary. That social commentary is absolutely necessary. Having to face the reality that your government isn't the best, yes. People willing to sacrifice the lives of others if it means they get to live in comfort. This also has to do with the religious ideologies. You see how people control other people through religion, but it's also to maintain their comfort in the society, especially if they get to benefit monetarily and in their positions in society. Taking accountability for wrongdoings of your society and trying to do better gradually, even if you have to confront your own personal biases. And you do see this a lot with Sayona, and I think she is a perfectly flawed character that is perfect because she is trying her best to unpack everything that she has learned through her society, but she is trying to do better. And she has a teacher and she has somebody teaching her how to do this kind of stuff. And she is actively trying, but she can sometimes be a horrible person. But like I said, she's perfectly flawed, and I absolutely fucking love her. Being willing to stand up for people and the status quo when the time comes, like being willing to stand on motherfucking business, and that's why I love Sayona because my girl will stand on motherfucking business when it is time to stand on motherfucking business. The importance of teachable moments among friends while also accepting that not everybody has to be your teacher when you are unlearning bad behaviors. And this goes back to what I was talking about, where she's a perfectly flawed character, but she does have some racial and misogynistic biases that she has to unpack, and she has a teacher to help her unpack that stuff. But there is another character in this story that she doesn't baby Sayona. She isn't babying Sayona like the counterpart that she has that kind of plays off her and is willing to have these conversations, because not everybody is going to be your teacher. When you are unlearning discrimination in general, not everybody has to be your teacher. There are people willing to be your teachers, and that is 100% okay, but not everybody of that race, of that status, of that sexual orientation has to be there to be your teacher. And I love that they had the yin and yang of it, where you had the person that was a teacher from one that race that is being discriminated against, but then you have the yang of that society where it's just the other person that's like, I'm not willing to teach you anything because it is not my job to teach you anything. I've lost a lot and I've been pained by your society, and your society is very racist, and I don't have to be a teacher at all to you. If anything, like you kind of owe us stuff, but like nobody is going to baby me, so why do I have to baby you? And I absolutely love that about that character. um and not everybody has to applaud you for doing the bare minimum of just not being racist in general. Not everybody has to baby you as you are unlearning bad behaviors. Like literally this character is just like, you're just using your tears to try to make me feel sympathy for you when you really just need to get your shit together. And I love that character. There's this one scene where they explore white women tears, and it's done in such a fucking good way. Sayona swallowed, wiping her eyes of her sleeve. I'm not crying to get your sympathy. Aren't you? Kara demanded. This is how Taranish women solve their problems, isn't it? You just mope and cry, and woe is you, and everyone comes tripping over their dicks to rescue you. A laugh burst through Sayona's tears. That's not sure. There was some truth to what Kara said, but Sayona resented the stereotype. It's not like women or Taranish have a monopoly on crying. No, Kara agreed. You just have a monopoly on the woe is me of it all. What's that supposed to mean? You think that if a Quen girl cries over unwanted attention, any mage comes running to save her? No, she gets fired or disappeared, along with any Quen man stupid enough to come to her defense. So forgive me if I have trouble feeling sorry for you. I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me, I promise. Yeah, well, you're so floppy and shrimpy and pathetic. It's hard not to. And I think that scene, like everything that was said in that scene, is like perfect to like the exploration of just how white women tears are weaponized in an argument to be like, no, you're you're kind of winning this argument, and I don't like the idea of somebody else winning or like somebody else being right or somebody else making me feel like I am morally wrong for doing something that is selfish, so then I'm just gonna start to break down in tears. Which, like, even in the text where it says, you think that if a Quen girl cries over unwanted attention, any mage comes running to save her. No, she gets fired or disappeared. So, like, women of color, marginalized people, aren't given the same benefit of the doubt. They aren't given the same leeways as people like white women tears, that they just get to weaponize those whenever they want to. Exploration that migrants make up the backbone of our countries by doing all the jobs no one wants so that people in power can carry on doing the work they want to, meanwhile having a boot on their neck and them having lesser rights than everybody else. And you have that exploration done really well with Tamil and Kara being the examples of how they are overused in this society and they don't really get to benefit from it. Meanwhile, the people really benefiting from it are the people that have that privilege, and they are high mages and they get to live their cushy lives. Meanwhile, the Quen people and even some women that are stay-at-home wives, even though they're Turanish and they're of the main race of this society, even though they are the people of this world, the Turanish people, because they are stay-at-home wives, they don't get to live out their dreams, and they're not awarded the same comforts as somebody who is born into privilege and is a man and becomes a high mage. He basically gets to live out his dreams with not caring about the consequences of it. And it's kind of really fucked, but it's like holding up a mirror to society. And like I keep saying, like this book is just basically holding a mirror up to society and showing us everything that's wrong with it, and how we can be the change that we want to be, but we have to be willing to change, and we have to be willing to speak up, and we have to be willing to give up comforts, and we have to be willing to help others that don't look like us, that aren't us, that weren't born in the same place as us, that have been affected by the propaganda that the country they live in has affected them by racial biases, by discrimination, by misogyny, and how people have to work together to defend each other. And that sometimes people are going to be your teachers, and then some people aren't going to be your teachers. And that's completely fine. Not everybody has to be your teacher. Um, this is definitely a good standalone. I love the magic. The magic is explored, and it's like a full circle moment where you learn everything and it comes right back to the beginning. And I absolutely love that about this book. And I would definitely have loved more books in this series, but I feel like it would have overextended the series. And also, the magic system kind of traps the world into one book, which is 100% okay. It's 100% okay. And I'm okay with it being one book. I absolutely love the journey that I got to have with this one book, but I do think that it should at least be a movie. This has to be a movie or a limited series. It has to be either a movie or a limited series, and I would love the fuck out of it. I would watch the fuck out of that movie. I would be pre-ordering my tickets to watch that movie. And like I said, I tandem read this. I read this with the audiobook, and the audiobook narrator is really good at mask and femme voices. So the masculine voices, they sounded like a completely different person was reading them, and the feminine voices they they just have a very wide range of doing multiple characters, and even between two feminine voices they sounded very distinct from each other, and one that was older sounded older, one that was like mid-range sounded mid-range, one that was younger sounded younger. And then same thing with the masculine men, where you have one narrator doing all the voices, and you're having her do like an elderly man, and then you have her doing her mentor that is like 40s 50s, and it's just like their range is really fucking good. I hope you guys like this book. I hope you guys pick it up. This was one of my favorites. It's going to be one of my favorites. It's going to stay in my head. I will eventually do an annotations video because I did have quite a few annotations, and I would definitely want to go through them and talk about all the themes that are explained in this book. I had a few favorite quotes, but that video would definitely contain a lot of spoilers. So that would be for another day. Thank you to Penguin Random House for accepting me into their influencer program for the audiobooks, because I got to listen to this one for free. I personally bought this copy, but I got to listen to this for free, and I got to tandem read it too. So I was highlighting while I was listening, and I really needed it because the first couple hundred pages have a lot of explaining to do with the magic system, and it's a really interesting magic system while it's also very cruel. And I had to write notes in the margins to like just kind of dumb it down for me, and in order to explain what the magic system meant, because I was just like, this is really complex, let me listen to this over and over again. So I kept like rewinding and then listening to it some more. Have a good day, guys.